pinnacle of his power, a man risks losing control. The world is not kind, so its king has become cruel. Murder is never mercy, it's never noble, and it's never redeemable. To the maniac, murder is an art form.
What is happening to God say something?
Welcome back to Visited by Voices Live. Hey, Sam, what month is it?
It's October, according to the little thing on my computer.
The little thing on your computer, that could be a cat.
Sure, we can call it a cat. I mean, words don't really have meanings, right?
Some do. Vanishingly few at this point, though. Sam, do we have a guest today?
I don't know. I think you just wandered in here, but I mean, you could be our guest if you want, Kevin.
We'd be happy to.
It's been a couple of years, Kevin, since you've been on the show. So I think there's probably well, it's certainly the audience has grown since then. So why don't you introduce yourself to the world, and then we're going to berate you with some questions, and then we're going to get sidetracked horrifically and talk about penis and Tupperware.
Again.
Awesome. My name is Kevin Lucia. My debut novel is coming out here in just another week, The Horror at Pleasant Brook from Crystal Lake Publishing. That's where the bulk of my work has been published, is through them. I'm also the ebook and paperback editor at Cemetery Dance Publications. And I've been writing for a while now. So that's all I got.
When did we meet, Kevin?
Yeah, I want to hear the meet cute story.
Yeah, we met at Wilkes at the book signing at the Wilkes-Barre Barnes Noble. The very first year, I think, they had that. We met. And I remember that may have been the year where they decided to put us in the cooking section.
That sounds right.
Like for some reason they decided to put the horror authors right in front of the cookbooks. So like these little old ladies would come up to our table. We'd be like, "Oh, they want horror." No, they just want to get the pecan pie booklets behind you on the rack. So I think that might have been the first time we met. Yeah, I think I'd known of you before then, but
I think that we. I think the Shock Lines had made us like aware of each other's existence.
Yes.
Shock Lines was I've made references to it before on the show, but it was a bulletin board that was run by Matt Schwartz to support his bookstore. And ironically, it lived longer than the bookstore and became a hub of major activity and really brought the literary community all together. It was amazing. When you look back at that period, like the people who we were like communicating with on the regular.
Like Ramsey Campbell or, Brian Keene or just people that just swing by. Yeah. Yep. And everybody, but like from them all the way down to small press authors, we were all in the same place at the same time. Absolutely.
And even the people who have proved to not be completely valuable to the community, because there were a few. You know what? I'm still astounded that everyone was trying to do a thing. And I think it was really healthy to have a central place. And I do feel that that's one thing we're missing now.
Yeah.
Social media didn't replace it in any constructive way.
Not really, no. And there's been abortive attempts to try to bring it back, but it just hasn't worked out. I don't think you can, unfortunately. I don't think you can recreate those days.
Yeah, definitely a time and a place.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, I do want to apologize to the audience because my voice is going to be crap tonight. I am suffering from a head cold. So basically my head feels about 3 times larger than it usually feels, which is usually twice as big as it really is. So
you're in full Funko Pop mode.
Yeah, exactly. I might just start bobbing in sunlight. I don't know.
Oh man, that'd be great for the store. We get these little like the Lauren bobbleheads that you can put on your car dash.
No, because you know what?
Like the little hula dancers.
This is absolutely gonna piss me off because you know what? If I make one for me, I'm gonna have to make one for you, and yours is gonna sell better.
I mean, I'll buy one. I'll buy one of them. Oh, I'll buy two. I'll buy one of me and one of you because like that's how it has to go. They have to go as a pair. It doesn't make sense otherwise.
Does Jeff the intern get a bobblehead, or is that still to be determined?
He might have to work his way up to bobblehead.
I think so.
Yeah.
Jeff is currently making his way through season 3 of Twin Peaks, and when he gets to the end, I and JT are doing a massive show about what Twin Peaks is.
Oh wow!
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I think he's good and freaked out right now. So that's going to be an exciting thing. That'll be shared between this channel and JT's channel. If you haven't, JT's Horror Discussions. If you don't subscribe to that site, you should on the YouTube, the tube of views. But Kevin,
Yes.
let's talk about the book. I'm particularly excited because over the years, you've kind of like gone from being the short story king to the novella king. So I'm very interested to see you dive into the longer realm where you get a little bit more breathing room, which is a whole different monster.
It is. It is. Yeah, I'm excited too. I mean, it certainly isn't the first novel I've attempted. I've attempted several novels over the years, and for whatever reason, they just got to a certain point where they just collapsed under their own weight, or I didn't have a clear way forward for my characters. So I would just put it, like I said, I would put it aside, and like you said, I'd go to work on a novella or something like that. They just seemed to come so much quicker there for a time. So I just focused on those just so I could produce and stay active. But having this be and it's a little surprising that this is my first novel, because it started as just a writing exercise. It started as just a online writing exercise where, a lot of the stuff that I write is quieter. You would say quiet horror, a lot like Charlie Grant's work or The Twilight Zone, that sort of thing. But this one, I just kind of said, well, I want to write something that's loud and noisy and bloody. And my only goal at the very beginning was I want to write this thing where I kill somebody every single chapter. And I want to try to get as inventive as possible with every have I disemboweled somebody yet? No, I haven't. So that's what I'm going to do next. And that's what it really started out, was just a interesting writing experience that I was doing around Halloween. And then I realized that as it gained steam, I'm like, no, I think this might be more. And then I remember taking it back, down off my blog and things like that. And then I realized that I had set a through line that was pretty straightforward, which is not what I had done in my previous novel attempts. And I thought to myself, I might be able to bring this one across the finish line. And I was able to, thankfully.
So if I was to ask for the elevator pitch of horror at Pleasant Brook, what would you give me?
Creeping small town horror oozing its way through a town that has been ushered back into social distancing because of resurge of COVID. So the town is slowly falling asleep and slowly being devoured from the inside as it falls asleep.
Oh, that's just a Tuesday for me. Wait, today's Monday. Oh, damn.
Well, tomorrow's going to suck in Texas, huh?
No, we're getting a cold front this week. We're probably going to have temperatures in the 70s. So, yeah.
We'll get snow before October's done, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Brag about it.
Yeah,
I just
same
planted
here.
some sweet peppers. I don't need no snow right now.
See, I just harvested the last of my goji berries off the tree, which is exciting, but it's not very exciting because it's like the end of the season, so it's depressing. No more goji berries.
But they're very tasty.
Kinda, yeah. They are definitely an acquired taste, but I like them.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, Kevin, I wanted to ask you a question. What's your favorite way to kill someone in a book?
My
Nobody
favorite
clip
way to
that.
kill, I think my favorite way in this book is I had someone snapped over a knee and then the spine ripped out.
That's a Mortal Kombat level fatality. Is cool.
Yeah. I just, and that's, I was like, this is what should happen now. I haven't had a spine ripped out yet, so that's what I went with.
Lauren, have you ever ripped out any spines in a book?
no.
In a book?
In a book, no.
But last Wednesday,
It's odd though, and Kevin, you can probably speak this. Like, I think that at some point people started looking at the horror genre in segments. It's like, okay, that guy writes splatterpunk. That one writes extreme horror. This one writes quiet horror.
Yep.
And I never viewed it that way. Like,
Right.
It's useful in certain cases, right? So Charlie Grant, it makes sense to call quiet horror because he was never going to deviate from that. We get it. But in a modern sense, and I don't know when exactly it happened. It might have been around the time of Shocklines, honestly. Like we have a generation of horror writers came up that unapologetically said, you know what, I like horror movies, even the dumb ones.
Right.
Which before the 90s, at least, that was not an acceptable thing to say if you're a horror writer. There was always kind of an aloofness. No, we're the good guys. They're doing the smart stuff.
Right.
Right.
And
then maybe it's Skip and Spectre, maybe. They might have been maybe a little bit of Clive Barker, somewhere in that time period, 88.
Yes, I would agree.
But do you think that those labels are actually useful?
I think those labels are, well, obviously the marketing, from a marketing standpoint, they're useful. But I think for me, I identified with quiet horror simply because it was the first place I felt comfortable. And I think as a writer, it helps identify who you are. But like you're saying, Charlie Grant was never going to write anything else besides quiet horror. And I got to a point where I'm like, well, I'm not going to abandon quiet horror. I have a collection coming out next year from Crystal Lake. It's all quiet horror. It's back to my, so I'm never going to abandon it. But I was just like, I want to write something different now. I want to write something that boogies, and as a writer, it's useful to be your comfort zone until you're ready to leave. You know what I mean? And whether or not that boxes you in, I don't know if it boxes you in as much as it used to, though.
Well, do you think that has a lot to do with where horror publishing is at the moment, too? I mean, there's more mainstream houses publishing horror now than there has been for 30 years. But whether they market it directly as horror or not is another issue.
Right.
There's definitely was a huge Gothic renaissance over the last 5 years in mainstream New York houses.
Yep.
But the small press has come into its being, like, for real as a force with the rise of Amazon. Somewhat with ebooks, but I'm thinking more the trade paperback becoming the dominant form.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because you and I probably remember that whole time period where everyone's like, paper's dead, Kindle is the future.
No, turned out that couldn't be more wrong, huh?
No, and ebooks, I know some people that do read nothing but ebooks, but I think, like you said, I think the Kindle and the trade paperback became their own entities unto themselves. One wasn't going to go away. I know people who buy both. I know people who buy the paperback to put on their shelf and they buy the ebook to read. So it was interesting how I think they complement each other. I don't think one was ever going to. But I remember that was the clarion call of all ebook the ebooks forever.
Yeah, we were told that we were eventually just going to be an all electronic marketplace, and all the bookstores would be gone, and
no more conventions, no more book signings, none of these things. So,
and it turns out that couldn't be more wrong. I mean, I think electronic books still have an important place in the community. Certainly, if you're reading on a plane, it's the way to go, probably.
Hell yeah.
Yep.
But it's kind of like vinyl and cassettes, right?
Right.
Or yes, MP3s exist, but if you're still buying cassette or vinyl, there's a reason.
Yep.
And it's something inborn. It's not going away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, what was it a goal for you to get to being a novelist? Was that a goal, or is it something that if it happened, it happened? Was it always story decided, or what?
Yeah, it was originally, the original was to be a novelist. In fact, before I ever started writing short stories and novellas, that's what I had the same pie in the sky dreams I think that every early writer has. I'm going to be a novelist. I'm going to write novels. Hollywood's going to option them all. I'm going to live in a cabin by a lake and sip my beer in between my best-selling novels, and that's all I wanted to do was write novels. So ironically enough, the idea of writing other things besides novels never really occurred to me until after several years of failure, rewriting the same novel over and over again. And I realized that I didn't know how to end anything. And then right around that same time, I read On Writing by Stephen King. And
A
now,
guy who infamously doesn't know how to end things.
true, yes, but it was his market advice, which now his market advice is probably a little dated. But at the time, the marketing advice about writing short stories, writing articles, writing essays, writing reviews, kind of just establishing a base for yourself and a name, and that really, like, I realized that here I am trying to write novels, and I'm not trying to write. There's all these other things that I could be writing that are shorter and might get me to where I want to be a little bit quicker. But in the back of my mind, there was always that I really want to write a novel. And not only want to write a novel, I want to write a big doorstopper. Because, Stephen King being one of my favorite writers, I mean, his big novels, or the Peter Straub big novel. That was the problem, though, is I was trying to write these very complex labyrinth, novels like Peter Straub, where he would make it non-linear and very literary, and I would try to do that, or I'd try to write the Stephen King, have 14 main characters and try to weave them all together, and it just never, for the longest time, it never worked. So, but it was still that kind of like, I'm very happy that I've published all these books, but 12 years in, I haven't got a novel yet. So when it turned out that this was going to be a novel and it was going to work out, I was pretty happy. That's for sure.
Bob Zombie is saying he's never read an ebook in his life and he can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I will read an ebook if I have to, and there's no other options. I'll read an ebook. But
I don't have something to read it on, so that's a problem, I guess.
It's called a smartphone.
It's called 50 years old in my eyes. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have one friggin' word on the screen because I have to make it so large.
Just get my own, guys. It's fine.
I can't read on a Kindle. I have a nice big tablet to read on, so if I have to.
Hey, Jade Stingray's in the chat.
Haven't seen you in a while, man. It's good to see you're still out there. So, I think one of the interesting things about that's happened in horror fiction over the last, again, 5-6 years or so, is that as new names have started to actually come up to compete for like actual acknowledgement, because we lived for a long while, where there was like 2 names that ever got brought up in the mainstream, and that has been changing. We're very fortunate that someone like Stephen Graham Jones is out there and undeniable, right?
Yes.
Because for a long time, no one could break through that gridlock.
Right.
And the interesting thing is, I think small press people in the past, there was always thought of that there was a ceiling at some point.
Right. Yes.
The old rule was a successful small press book, depending on what they spent to make the book, will sell between 50 and 500 copies.
Right.
And both of us know that we've surpassed those numbers fairly easily, but it wasn't easy in the beginning.
No,
it wasn't easy in the beginning at all. So someone like we had Brian Asman on the show promoting Man Fuck This Book, Fuck This House.
Fuck this book.
That's the sequel.
That's the sequel.
Man Fuck This
Absolutely, book. It has to be the sequel, right?
Oh my god! Hope the ending's as good as Man Fuck This House.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's kind of, he'll have to partner up with Mark Danielewski for House of Leaves and Man Fuck This House.
Man Fuck This House of Leaves.
But like that book is in every every Barnes and Noble.
Yes,
every single one of them now.
Yep.
When we had him on the show, he was like, "Hey, order from Amazon, have fun. If I'm going to give away a house eventually." He might end up having to actually buy that house and give it away.
Oh my god, it would be so funny. I left a copy of that in my mom's nursing home. There's a copy of that floating around.
That's amazing. But my point is just like, it looks like that ceiling is gone now. And and the option is out there to go to a major publisher because they're interested again in a certain type of horror. Yep. But the small press has much bigger reach, and even self-published guys, because that Asman book is self-published.
Yeah. The
reach is there. It's now about quality again, which puts us probably back to the 70s, if we're being really honest.
Yep. I think a lot has changed with Barnes & Noble, especially. I think Barnes & Noble was staring bankruptcy or being closed, just staring it down the barrel. And I know a lot of Barnes & Nobles, the Wilkes-Barre Barnes & Noble is a perfect example. They've been given a lot of freedom once they got the horror section back, because we now have a horror section in Barnes Noble,
Yeah.
and I know some people, it's different from every Barnes Noble. Some people complain their horror section is just King and Kuntz, but I see a lot of pictures on Facebook, especially there's a Facebook group called Books of Horror, where all these like CRMs from Barnes Noble across the country are sharing their horror sections, and these horror sections are full of small press books, small press and big press books. Crystal Lake's books are in Barnes Noble now, right next to Cemetery Dance's books, right next to a Stephen King novel. And I can't remember, I could be wrong, so somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Someone who was in charge of Waterstones is the one who now is in charge or a big decision maker with Barnes Noble. And that was the big decision they made, was to let these Barnes Nobles make their own decisions. Now, like, that's not every Barnes Noble. My Barnes Noble in my own area stinks. That's why I'm actually going, for my novel debut, I'm going to Wilkes for my signing, not my local Barnes Noble. So it's not every Barnes Noble. But I feel like more and more of those Barnes and Nobles are having book signings. They're stocking their shelves. They're letting employees who are readers say these books need to be on the shelves. And that may be the big difference right there, is letting employees of the store who are readers and fans saying we need to have these books on the shelves.
So just a quick shout out to the Edison Barnes and Nobles in the Menlo Park Mall, which has 4 6-foot sections of horror, and it spans from the classics to the reprints. So like you can pick up a new copy in trade paperback of Blatty's Legion, my favorite novel of all time, to small press stuff to self-published stuff. It's all represented there, and it's glorious. It's wonderful because King represents less than a quarter of their selection,
which is great. And he's my favorite author, but that's still great. That's the way it should be. Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, there's going to be a day, whether people like it, think about it or not, when King is no longer putting out new books.
Right.
And at that point, we need these other voices to have had an outlet. Otherwise, where are we?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that, way in the future, when Stephen King eventually passes on, do you think Joe Hill's just going to put out books writing as his father?
That's an interesting.
It'd be hard to ignore that because, I mean, his books obviously are going to keep making money.
That'd be an interesting. I don't know though if Joe has the same pace that his father puts him out. Even now, I think his father, Steve, still outpaces Joe. Joe seems to be very involved in novels, but also very involved in his graphic novels and things like that. And I'm not sure what happened to Lauren. It looks like we lost Lauren.
Oh, he just probably peaced out. He was tired of the conversation. You know how he is now. I'm sure his cat's probably unplugged one of the wires.
Yeah.
He's been doing that lately. What's your cat's name?
My cat's name is that one. Her name is Princess. Aww. So you can tell that she was named by my daughter when my daughter was like 8. So.
Oh my God. Yep. My first cat was named Speedy after Speedy Gonzalez from Looney Tunes, but he was a white cat. And I have no idea why I fucking did that. But I also had a rabbit named Beetlejuice. So.
Not Benicula.
Kid logic.
Not Benicula?
Not Benicula? You didn't name it Benicula?
Yeah. Unfortunately not.
The
that was before I got to like reading age, I think.
Oh, okay.
My first cat that was my cat was named Cow Jr.
What? Cow?
Cow Jr.
Cow Moo.
Exactly. What happened to Cow Senior?
She was still around for a while.
Was Cow Jr. like Cow Senior's kitten?
Yes.
I love it.
This is all very self-explanatory.
I just have questions. I mean, I had a roommate.
My sister, who is completely unaware of my YouTube presence, however, has featured in videos, such as an animated video about Halloween, affectionately called cats because of this Moo Moo kitties.
Oh
my God, that is so cute.
And everyone tuned in to hear about horror novels, huh? You're hearing about cats now.
Look, I mean, if there's a cat on screen, I want to talk about cats.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys probably already saw the orange blur that I had on my lap. That was Lucy.
I'm pussy free tonight. So here we are.
No, but we were just talking about, I was asking Kevin if, he thought maybe like Joe Hill would just start writing and like as his father to keep more Stephen King books on the shelves, right?
I don't think that's going to be a concern. I think Joe Hill's like, there was a big fear when Joe Hill really started coming out that there was going to be a baton passed. And I think it's pretty obvious now that there's going to be a more democratic marketplace when that day comes.
Yeah.
Because there already is. That's the point. So I don't think there'll be one inheritor of the horror throne. I don't think I think you get that once every 100 years, and we're going to have a period where everything goes, and a lot of different writers are going to make their mark. And you know what? Fuck it. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
Honestly. I think Stephen King's first, 15 years of publishing represent some of the most powerful, transformative writing in the horror genre's history. So I never want to take anything away from him, ever. But I will always say that what the media did and built him into was destructive to everyone else trying to make a mark. I think
a celebrity.
Yeah, exactly. That became part of the goal of the horror writer, and it shouldn't be. Like your Blatties and your Blocks, and even if you go back further than that, then your Mathesons, and these are people who the work was the first thing. But I mean, you know as well as I did, and when we were first coming into the scene, how often did you hear people talk about being the next Stephen King when you met them?
It was like it became meaningless after a while. It was used in so many reviews. It became meaningless after a while.
And there's not going to be another Stephen King, because Stephen King existed at a time period. He helped modernize the modern horror novel, right? Along with people like Thomas Tyron, right? So, I mean, It wasn't just him, but the media decided that he was the face of it, because he was the guy that had the American Express ad, and he was the guy who got adapted by De Palma and Kubrick. I mean, right? So, I mean, it's no fault of his. And again, I think you take that early career and you can put it up against anything in the genre's history. But I do think the media decided to do something that was counterproductive for for horror in general.
Yeah.
No use crying about it now because it's changing. I mean, Alma Katsu and Stephen Graham Jones and Daniel Trusani, these are people who are making big frickin' waves in the mainstream and working unabashedly, and will tell you they are working unabashedly in the genre.
Yep.
This is a new golden age that's just beginning, I believe.
Yeah.
So
I've heard the same thing from the other different places too. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I was at the I was at StokerCon this year, and I got to see the Stoker Awards, and it was awesome to see Cynthia Palello and Gambino Iglesias both winning the Stoker. I mean, that was, and I think Gambino won the Shirley Jackson Award as well for the Devil, which I'm currently reading right now, and it's wonderful. And it's great to see that kind of change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And on the same level, like if you want to do the grimy stuff, you can write that Scarecrow in a Cornfield novel.
Yep.
From
by Adam Cesare.
Yep. Yeah, and it has a place on the marketplace. No one's looking down on it. There's not two classes anymore.
No.
And I think that's an important moment for us. We're going to veer a little bit here because we knew that was going to happen, but I think maybe we're starting to see the beginning of literature influencing film as well.
Yeah.
I mean, Knock at the Cabin was a one-off, but obviously Paul Tremblay got adapted.
Yeah.
I didn't see it, so I don't know how well it was done.
Yeah,
I didn't actually care for the novel, but it's not the point. I was excited to see a major horror novel get a major adaptation because when was the last time that happened?
Right.
I saw it.
That wasn't Stephen King. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Sam?
Oh, no, I saw it, Knock at the Cabin, but I didn't read it. So we were both missing pieces of the puzzle here.
Yeah. Well, that's why we both exist, though, because it's a whole picture. But I think also some things like it's not necessarily exactly what we do, but again, Cullen Bunn's Empty Man graphic novel being adapted into a film. It came from the right place finally. It's not some original screenplay based on a marketing trend.
Yep.
And I
Someone
think
in the comments mentioned Grady Hendrix also
Yep.
getting out. Yep.
Yep. That's going to be a tricky one, I think, right? Because I could see Hollywood not quite understanding the weird comments, the weird secondary commentary,
Right.
and just
Yeah.
doing it as straight satire, and that's not
Yep.
what it. Yeah. But again, I'm overjoyed. This could be a very good thing, and this could help again expand the acceptability of being a horror reader,
Yes.
Mhm.
which is it's sad. In the 60s and 70s, this was not a thing. It was not like looked down upon. But then something happened by the end of the 70s, whereas again, unless you're reading like the very mainstream of
Right.
you weren't, which would be VC Andrews or King or Kuntz or John Saul or Robert McCammon for a brief moment, right?
Yep.
Unless you were reading that stuff, you were kind of looked at as like, oh, what are you reading? Really? There's
course,
a skeleton,
some of
there's a cheerleader skeleton on that cover, you know?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Some of those 80s covers didn't help.
Yeah.
Although they're still charming in their own way.
Yeah, I just don't want to go back to it.
No.
It's a beautiful. I actually collect Gothic novels from the 40s through the 70s. I give up after that because they start to look different. But inevitably, there's a girl in a costume dress running away from a castle on the cover of every
Looking over her shoulder at the castle.
every single one of them. But it's a great moment in the horror genre's history that no one talks about. But first of all, those novels are actually pretty good. They're all the
Right.
same,
Yep.
but they're all pretty good.
Yep.
But it was also a time when like 90% of horror was being written by women. And we tend to forget it or don't acknowledge it. And that's to our own failure. So I like the idea that today we have such a broad field of people from different backgrounds. So you have your Silvia Moreno Garcia, right?
Yep.
Who can put out something brilliant, or an Alma Katsu, or you can have, people from any walk of life actually have a way to get to market.
Yes, we do.
And that's just, this is the best period. It really is. I just hope we capitalize on it.
Yeah. I agree. And I think, I know I actually was fortunate to have a Zoom call in my capacity, the Cemetery Dance, with the executive director of Ghost House Pictures, which is run by Sam Raimi. And people in that arena are looking at the small press as well. For example, Every House is Haunted is currently in development. Every House is Haunted by Cemetery Dance by Ian Rogers is currently in development with Sam Raimi. It's a Netflix film. And when I was talking to this guy who runs Ghost House Pictures, they want to see what's going on. I'm getting emails all the time for, and these things are kind of like dime a dozen. They don't ever necessarily pan out. But lots of people asking for film rights and TV rights for our CD books, which is great that they're looking at that level. They're not just, they're looking at that level to start producing, even if it's something that ends up on Tubi, they're looking at that mid-level writers instead of just the big people.
And Ian Rogers is one of those guys that he made it into every Barnes and Noble too.
Yep.
So it's fascinating to me where we're at, and you're releasing a book in this atmosphere, which has to be an extremely exciting thing. Last year, I was fortunate enough to go through it too, and the response was amazing and different. It felt very different than 5 years ago. Yes. Releasing a novel today is a very different experience. Certain things have settled. Like, you remember this moment? If you don't have a website, you're gonna fail. Now it's like, why are you wasting your time on a website? It seems like
I don't know if anyone even goes to them anymore.
No, absolutely not. But it gets to a point where the work is important again, and there is actual word of mouth. I'm not sure exactly where it is, to be honest with you, because it's impossible. Social media is so nebulous, right? It's like you can't really see it. It must be doing the work, but I can't figure it out. I can't find it.
But you're right, because we were at and I don't have it with me, but there's a great picture. I was at Scares That Care a couple years ago, and I posed with a person who bought my books, and they have and like I said, this wasn't happening 5 years ago. There were people walking around. There were T-shirts that said support indie horror.
Yeah.
Like nobody had T-shirts that said that 5 or 6 years ago. Nobody was saying that. I mean, and I remember, my very first book that was published by Shroud Publishing. It was published on Amazon, and bookstores couldn't order or wouldn't order it. And it was just kind of, nobody was saying support indie horror back then. But now you got people at conventions wearing T-shirts saying support indie horror. So to have a novel, it almost makes it feel like all those years where I was frustrated that I couldn't finish a novel. I'm glad I waited 12 years. I'm glad it took 12 years. I'm glad that this is the environment that I'm releasing my first novel in.
It's all a journey, all of it. I'm excited for you because it is a great, great moment.
Yeah.
And I think the cover art of the book is amazing and is going to get some attention, which I hate to talk about cover art as a thing, but we both know that marketing these books is tough enough. If you have a, not great cover, you're in trouble.
Right. Yeah.
It
sounds like Keelan Patrick Burke, and he always knocks it out of the park. So he did a really nice job on that.
Yeah. It's a great looking book from the photos I've seen.
Yep.
Obviously I don't have one in my hands yet. Hint, hint, hint.
Well, I know somebody who could take care of that for you.
Well, that would be an amazing thing.
Yeah, I can hook you up.
Yeah. But in this environment, although there's a great opportunity to finally get eyes on, like there hasn't been for people on our level for a long time, I think that to stand out, it's not like Amazon reviews move books anymore. That's the other side of it, right? It is much more organic, but that's also scary because you don't have the visibility on what moves the needle.
Right.
So there's a lot of faith and there's a lot of just putting yourself out there.
Yep.
So, I mean, obviously you're on the show tonight, but not just because you love Sam and I, but because you want to sell a friggin' book. So do you have a preference to where people go about buying the book?
I really don't. As long as they get a book of mine in their hands or on their Kindle or on their e-reader of their choice, I'm perfectly happy. I know it's currently on the ebook is currently on pre-order on Amazon. The paperback and the hardcover is going to release live October 6th, I think. I sign copies and I mail direct. As long as people get it in their hands and read it and talk about it, then I'm a happy guy.
So right now, because I am overworked, underslept, and lazy, there's only a link to your Amazon profile in the description below this video. It is there. If you click it, you'll see that the second book listed is Horror at Pleasant Brook. So you can get your pre-order in, guys. But I will update that and with a more robust listing of where they can get this stuff. I'm just incompetent at my job.
I doubt that.
You do have a head cold, so that could be part of it.
Yeah, so if I use that excuse, what happens when the head cold is done?
It's a chronic head cold.
It's gonna be well, that's probably true.
Oh, wow. Kevin, does Horror at Pleasant Brook have any sort of connection to the Clifton Heights series? Because I just started reading the things set through.
Oh wow! It's in the Adirondacks, and I do drop an Easter egg there about a character that used to live in Clifton Heights and has now come to Pleasant Brook. That's not about the only. Just there's kind of the slightest, because all the Clifton Heights books are so tightly connected to each other that I just wanted to write something. And I think I kind of like my next novel I want to write in another Adirondack town, but just again I wanted to keep that very separate and by itself. So I did drop, a character referencing when they used to live in Clifton Heights. So
okay, I wouldn't need to. Okay, so I don't need to read all the Clifton Heights books before I can read her. Okay.
Yeah, I felt like with the novels, especially that would be the short story collections and the novella collections. They're all linked, but they can be read in any order. So they're not sequential. You can just hop around as much as you want to. But for the novels, I really felt like I wanted it just to stand alone. I didn't want that. And that's why I even went with different covered art. All the Clifton Heights books are done by Ben Baldwin. Mm-hmm. And for the novel, I really wanted that beat up paperback look. And I wanted it to be noticeably different from the Ben Baldwin books. So I had Keelan Patrick Burke do it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was just looking at the cover for it. It's great. It's just sort of like I definitely get the creeping horror tone.
Yep.
and just kind of like this old force of evil just hovering over the town. That is beautiful.
Yeah.
So did you like grow up and around the Adirondacks, or is it just someplace that you've always wanted to set your stories in?
Every summer growing up, we went up to camping up there for a week. You know,
Ooh.
either go camping or we're going to a cabin. So all growing up, every summer we were going to be in the Adirondacks. And then when my wife and I first got married, they had a friend who had a cabin in the Adirondacks. For the first 7 or 8 years of our marriage, every summer we went up to the cabin up in the Adirondacks. So I just love it up there. I love the atmosphere. Of course, I always go in the summer. In the winter, it's a little bit of a different story. They get pretty mean winters up there. But I just love the atmosphere up there, and it just has that haunted feeling. Like, not in a scary way, but there's just like this presence, especially when you go hiking out in the woods and you realize how deep I am in the woods right now. And that I remember early on sitting around the fire. You know, my wife and I just got married, and her new husband's blathering on about wanting to be a writer someday. And I would sketch a lot of the stories by the fire, and I thought to myself, this is where I want to set my stories. I would want to set it up here in the Adirondacks.
That's cool. Are there any good ghost stories that they have up there, or any urban legends?
They do. Well, a lot of them are revolving around, like, you know, the Wendigo and other different Native American spirits. But I've mostly stayed away from those and try to just develop my own. You know, So I know they have them, but believe it or not, I've actually not really delved in them that much over the years because I just wanted to bring my own thing to it.
Neat. Yeah, because like Lauren, you've got the Mothman. Do you have any other creature? I mean, it's not like
Mothman is West Virginia.
Not like that. You've got the
I have chained in the basement, Sam.
What? What? I didn't hear you.
It gives me lottery numbers, but they're always wrong. It's a shitty Mothman.
Oh, it's like Great Value Mothman.
Yeah, exactly. No, we have something here called the Jersey Devil.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mothman's West Virginia. I'm stupid.
Correct.
Fuck.
Correct. Yeah, so we don't really believe in the Jersey Devil here. And do you know that where the Jersey Devil actually came from?
Regular Jersey?
No, this is going to blow your mind. A governor political election.
What?
Yeah, Mother Reed was a your mama joke, basically, in a political election. It was like just a mean-spirited story about a political candidate's mom.
That's how you got the Jersey
That's
Devil?
how we got the Jersey Devil. That's the truth of the matter. Go ahead and investigate it.
Your mom slept with Satan.
It's pretty much what they're saying. And yeah, so that, but that also, like, you know, that's also like the most Jersey cryptozoological answer ever, right? That it comes down to just a petty political squabble. I mean, you can't say that about Bigfoot. You know, Minneapolis, they all believe in him for goddamn sure, but like there's no, it's like big hairy man in the woods. There's nothing there. See?
Yeah, I know. You'd think I would know the Jersey Devil because you're in fucking New Jersey. It's been a long day. It's a Monday. I'm having one of the Garfield Mondays.
So, Kevin, obviously, like when you're launching a book, it seems like the worst question ever, but it comes up in every time you talk to anyone, but because you want to focus on this thing. But
right.
What's the future look like? What do you want to do aspirationally? Like if you had an open runway and a whatever in the plane of your choice, you can go wherever you want. Where you landed, man?
So we're talking career-wise here.
I mean, the important career, the one that involves, conjugating verbs.
Yeah. I would love it if my writing could someday eat more lasagna. If my writing could someday complement my paycheck from cemetery dance to where that could be my day job. Because I work part-time for cemetery dance now and I teach full-time. In the last year, I've picked up a couple ghostwriting jobs, which I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did. And I was also a little shocked maybe a little dismayed at how much money I made doing that compared to my own fiction.
Right.
But the idea of being able to have this be my full-time career, I love teaching. I've been doing it for 22 years. I don't know if maybe a little burnout is starting to set in. I certainly feel a little less connected with the students than I used to. But I would love, like, I don't have any illusions of writing full time, just writing full time. But I'd love to be able to complement that cemetery dance salary to the point where I could just make this full time. That would be great.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the big untold truths about the writing life, right? That
Right.
no one is allowed to say aloud, so I'll just be the one that says it.
Yeah.
You'll never get health care from a publisher. You'll
Right.
never get a 401k match
Yep.
from a publisher.
Yep.
So you're going to have to fucking work.
Yep.
Okay? So if
Yep.
if anyone watching this is aspiring to be a writer, I fully support you. Do it for the right creative reasons. Do it because it's your passion. Be it because you want to add your little wrinkle to the genre's history. But don't do it because you want the money.
Right.
Because A, you're probably not getting it. And B, even if you do get enough money to survive, you still have to pay for things that are still going to put you in a day job.
Yeah.
Promise you.
Yeah. And that's where I'm really fortunate. Why I'm glad I took the cemetery dance job, because with cemetery dance, there are, regular employee benefits and things like that, which I'm not taking advantage of right now because I'm only working part-time. But there would be a unique opportunity that I would not have otherwise, that I would not have if I was just writing. So,
absolutely. So as far as a project, what's next? You working on something? Yes, the answer is yes. So I just want to hear.
Yeah, always yes. So ironically enough, I have my second novel is coming out right on the heels of my first novel. It was just one of those things that happened. My second novel, Billy the Kid and the Lazarus Stone, is coming out through Crossroads Press in November, and that's a weird Western involving Billy the Kid and King Solomon and the Knights Templar and monsters, and it's all this biblical myth and everything mushed together. And so that's coming out right after Billy the Kid. My next short story collection is coming out in the spring, when the lights go out, from Cemetery Dance. And right now I'm currently working on a couple different novellas. There's a novel that needs to be which will be my third novel, that needs to be rewritten, not from the ground up, but just kind of like a tightening. So that's currently what I'm working on right now, is bouncing back and forth between some of these little different projects. They're just kind of waiting for me to, just sitting there patiently waiting for me to turn my attention to them and get them finished. So.
And somehow be work themselves into a life filled with teaching children, grading paper.
Yes. Well, I don't keep normal hours. I'm in bed every night by 9:30, and I'm up every day by 3:30. So I started doing that about 15 years ago, so I could get that good. I just happen to wake up naturally early in the morning. I'm not really a night person. So now, even if I want to sleep, and I can't, my body just wakes up at 3:30 and says, "It's time to go." And then I'm like, yeah, I might as well write something. I'm up.
Yeah.
I don't use an alarm clock because I just tell myself when I'm going to get up, and I get up too.
Yes,
crazy.
I've got the alarm clock there just in case, but
Yeah.
I'm always turning it off when I wake up.
Right before it's supposed to go off. Yep. Every morning.
Yep.
Crazy.
And let's not forget though too, as a teacher, I have my summers off. So
that's
then
true.
I have two good months there where I can just blast stuff out to my little heart's content, which I usually cover a lot of ground in July and August.
Is that when you did the majority of your writing for Horror Pleasant Brook and Billy the Kid and the Lazarus Stone?
The Horror Pleasant Brook was actually like a year or so process, because I kept coming back to it and finishing other things. Billy the Kid has actually been a 10-year saga, because I started writing it about 10 years ago, because I had an opportunity to pitch something to Harper Teen. And at that time, Harper Teen was doing Romeo and Juliet and vampires and Sense and Sensibility and
sea monsters.
And little women vampires. So
I don't acknowledge that I might have written one of those. That might be out of print gracefully.
What?
Well, I have a good friend who used to be the senior acquisitions editor at Harper Team, and she wrote Romeo and Juliet and Vampires. So she and I were talking, and we were talking about a Billy the Kid like monster novel. It had the historical angle of Billy the Kid, so it was something that they could market to teens and libraries and things like that. And when I finally came up with my pitch, she loved it. She took it to the marketing team, and the head of marketing says, well, sales isn't going to get it. They're not going to know how to market it. So then she hooked me up with a couple agents, and I emailed the agents, and the agents were all like, this sounds great, but this sounds like an adult horror novel. It doesn't sound like a teen novel. And I'm like, all right, I'm just going to sit down and start writing it. And
Sex and blood is coming. That's what I'm saying.
And I wrote it. I wrote it, and but then I also halfway through I experienced this like, I don't know how to write a Western. I can't write a Western. You know, so I just put it away for like a whole year. And then one year, the kicker was, we went on vacation. And we drove cross country to Arizona. So we drove through Texas, where the novel takes place. And I'm looking around at Texas and going, I totally got all the geography wrong.
Yes,
I totally screwed. So that set me off another year until I finally, one summer, I did take an entire summer where I devoted myself to rewriting it, changing all the geography so it was a little bit more, at least there is some verisimilitude there. But that was Billy the Kid was a long saga. That was a long time coming. That one was.
So was it like did you grow up like reading Westerns of any sort, or is this just going to dive right in?
I grew up reading some Westerns. Like I read the Lone Ranger Westerns, and I read Zane Grey at one point, the Riders of the Purple Sage. Mm-hmm. At that point, this was just as it came out. That's another reason why I think I put it away for such a long time, because it came out of specific talks with this acquisitions agent who was looking for a certain type of book. You know, they had already published all these books that were like literary adjacent, and mine was history adjacent. And so it had been formulated specifically for this pitch.
Yeah.
So that was part of the reason with my confidence was like, did I even though I did a lot of research and I really enjoyed writing it, I was kind of like, well, I did it for a pitch. Maybe it's not really me. Maybe it's not genuine, you know? So that's why I put it away for a couple of years, because I was worried that I had wrote it for the pitch, not because I actually wanted to write it. Which, after I got back into it and realized how much fun it was to have Billy the Kid blow monsters up, I was like, okay, I made my peace with this. I really enjoyed this, and I don't know if there'll ever be a sequel, but I've made my peace with this. I enjoyed writing this. So.
That's awesome.
Excellent. Well, don't worry. We're going to get you to your bedtime on time tonight. Don't worry. But I have to ask, over the last 10 years, everything's changing. Everything's moving. You as an artist have also changed. That's undeniably true. There's a lot of people just entering right now, writing, getting interested, because that's always the case. But even that more now with all those new names that are actually making their tread marks in the mud, right?
Right.
There's an entire class coming up now. I get messages from people all the time. They're like, what should I do? Should I try and get an agent? Should I try and finish a novel? Should I try and write short stories? Or do you know of any good short story markets? Are magazines buying? What are the magazines?
Right.
And it's always been a complex issue. You work for Cemetery Dance, so I'm not going to throw any shade, but the chances of a story getting into the magazine, right?
Yeah, it's tough. They've got
the math is not on anyone's favor.
No.
So the question:
I've been rejected by Cemetery Dance, so
yeah,
but that was before I worked for him.
So I guess what I'm asking is what advice for the person coming in now to when they step into this world of shifting sands, with the caveat that obviously we could all be completely wrong because no one knows, and that's the beauty of the moment. What advice would you give the writer that's starting out now?
Make it about the work. That's the only thing you can control. I remember having a conversation. I was actually at that place. It was, oh goodness, was it 10 years ago? It's hard to believe. 10 years ago, I was at Horror Find, and I was talking to Ronald Malfi, and I was asking him a lot of the same questions about pitching to New York, getting an agent, yada 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 yada. And Ron Malfi, first of all, he's a wonderful writer. Second of all, he's an amazing human being. There are some people who you say, "Oh, he's a rock star," where Ron Malfi is actually legitimately a rock star in a rock band that's almost as big as his writing now. But he's such a genuine person. And he told me, he goes, fuck New York. Oops, sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that.
No, you can say fuck as much as you want.
Fuck New York,
Me.
fuck agents, make it about the work. If you make it about the work, then on days when you're depressed because you haven't sold anything, or you see other people who seem to be having greater traction than you in your career, all these shifting sands, like when we were being told print is dead, ebooks forever, all these things. What got me up out of bed every single morning was not some career aspiration. It wasn't like I'm going to sell this, I'm going to sell that. What got me up out of bed every single morning was this was my time to do my thing. And this is what really matters, and there are a lot of people who say that they would write even if they knew they weren't going to get published. I can't honestly tell you if that would be true in my case. If I felt like my career was winding down to an end, I probably could find other things to do in my life and maybe sleep in. But when you make that writing just your focus, and you're like, and I think Norman Partridge once said it too, that at your desk, that's what you can control. You're sitting down, you're writing, that's what you can control. And if you make it about that, then it doesn't matter what changes. The most important part of it is the work. And if the work is what's the most important thing to you, then I'm going to go out on a limb and say odds are you're going to be able to weather whatever changes come. Because whether ebooks die, whether print dies, whether we're all transmitting stories directly to each other's brains 20 years from now,
That might already be happening.
Possibly, yeah. The work is what matters at the end of the day, whatever form it takes. That's the best advice I can give, because it's still true for me today. You wake up because the work is that's why you're waking up in the morning.
I asked that question, and there's always a chance that it's going to blow up on me and go in a direction I completely disagree with. But you basically just handed out what I consider to be the perfect answer to that. Yeah. Do what you want to, do what you love, do what you wish was in the world already.
Yep.
Because it brings joy to you. The rest of it will work itself out. Yep. I discovered I'm a small press guy. I'm never going to be a New York guy. And you know what? It's the right box for me.
Exactly. Yep.
And that's a glorious thing.
Yep.
All right. Well, guys, we're going on an hour, so we're going to close out the episode. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We haven't done as many episodes in the last couple months as we really would like. We're trying to get started back up here. Life is complex. The post-COVID world threw a bunch of stuff at all of us that, honestly, we're all trying to figure out how to make this work and have a consistent show. But the fact that you guys all stuck with us means the world to me. Buy the hell out of this man's book. I can't say it properly. Because here's the thing. We always talk about wanting new stories. You have to actually support the news stories when they're there.
Yep.
So I want to get to a day when people are asked to name 3 horror writers and they name someone besides Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft, and Stephen King. I want to get to that day.
Right.
We have a lot of work to do, but you know what? Kevin's out there putting the work out. So support the hell out of it. Is there somewhere people can actually come and buy a signed book shortly?
This Saturday I'll be at Wilkes. I'll be at the Wilkes Barnes Noble from noon to 4. I'll be signing and possibly doing a reading as well.
That's in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, a beautiful town in the middle of nowhere.
Yep. And at the end of the month, I will be at Spooky Empire
in Florida, in Orlando.
Yeah, it's actually my first kind of first time I've ever been invited anywhere as a guest. So I'm pretty excited about that.
That is tremendous. Please, if you're in the neighborhood and you want to support independent horror, then come on out and support Kevin. Kevin is a returnee to the show, which makes you on a very short list of people who've come back and dealt with me twice.
3 times actually, because I was on the round table.
You were on a round table. That's right. So you're up there with Brian Hodge and Ramsey Campbell and the select few that could actually deal with me.
Woo! That's pretty August company right there.
That's where you're rolling these days. All right. Any final words for everyone watching?
No, just thanks for everyone watching, and I hope you'll give the horror at Pleasant Brook a chance.
And don't forget to burp your dick Tupperware.